Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Tech Talks with NASSCOM Insights. I'm Prerna, Buckshee, Senior Analyst, part of the GCC Digital Transformation and Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Charters at NASSCOM Insights, and I'll be your host for the day. In today's episode, we are going to discuss digital enterprise maturity and the giant strides that enterprises have taken in the digital transformation journey, especially since the hard blow of the pandemic hit the globe. And to join us in this discussion are our three revered panelists. We have with us Mr. Sriram Gopalswamy, Vice President Information Systems, Sabre Global Capability Center. As a leader of the Technology, Engineering and Operations Group in Bangalore and the Global Leader for Operations Control Center, Sriram is responsible for improving the overall stability of products and services deployed across on-premises and multiple public clouds. He's a champion of site reliability engineering and automation and is also acting as an interim site leader for the Bengaluru GCC. Prior to joining Sabre in 2018, Sriram was Senior Director Operations at Cineverse, where he led several global operational teams such as Command Center, DevOps, Application Operations and Innovation, along with the migration of mission-critical telecom products hosted in physical data centers to the public cloud. Additionally, Sriram is the author of the patent Simplifying Automate Software Maintenance of Data Centers. Welcome to our discussion, Sriram. We also have with us, Mr. Ravi Kumar Krishnamoorthy, Senior Vice President, Head of Global Delivery Applications at Sony. Ravi wears multiple hats for Sony, along with being their center head for the IT team. He also plays the pivotal role of Deputy CIO and leads application development management for the organization. Welcome to the session, Mr. Ravi Kumar.
Thank you, Prerna. Happy to be part of this.
Great. And our third and final panelist for today's session is Mr. Swapnil Bhatnagar, Senior Research Director, Avasant. With over 17 years of industry analyst and corporate strategy experience, Swapnil's areas of focus span across technology prerequisites such as blockchain, intelligent automation, hybrid cloud, AI, and advanced analytics, IoT, and cybersecurity, among others. Moreover, Swapnil has authored several seminal research reports, including Radar View Market, Industry and Provider Assessments, and industry-defining reports on nascent digital technologies. And as an accomplished speaker at various industry events, he has conducted multiple sessions around digital and emerging technologies. Prior to Avasant, Swapnil led South Asia research for IDC and key BPO segments for Everest Group. So a very warm welcome to all of you. And before we start with the questions, I would just like to give a brief context to our discussion today. As we know, enterprises across the globe have witnessed a paradigm shift in their digital transformation imperative, especially post the mighty blow of COVID. As phygital and hybrid become the next normal, the business case for going digital is becoming increasingly prominent, and enterprises need to interweave digital transformation in every nook and corner of their workflows to survive in today's rapidly evolving dynamic environment. Boardroom conversations, business strategies, growth plans, risk management models, business continuity plans et al. Need to all factor in digital transformation as a key focus area. As enterprises strive to normalize the new normal, the famous phrase, every company is a technology company, proves to be truer now than ever. Macro level factors such as the expected size of the global technology spend pegged at USD 1.8 trillion in 2022, up 6.5% from the 1.7 trillion mark in 2021. Size of the global digital economy estimated to reach nearly USD 53 trillion in FY 2023, constituting more than 50% of nominal GDP. And accelerated consumption trends in digital commerce, payments, digital content consumption, work from home related infrastructure and smart devices, etc. act as key drivers for enterprises to fast track their digital transformation journey and pivot towards accelerated adoption of core digital technologies such as cloud, edge computing, artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things, cybersecurity, while concomitantly dipping their toes in experiment with nascent emerging technologies such as Web 3.0, Metaverse, quantum computing, and connectivity technologies such as 5G, 6G, Wi-Fi 6, etc. Additionally, the role of solution providers has also become much broader now, as they need to go above and beyond mere delivery of products and services and partner with enterprises to co-innovate and enable adoption of responsible and sustainable technology solutions. Elucidating all the above factors and much more, NASSCOM and Avasant have recently published a report titled Digital Enterprise Maturity 3.0, Boosting Business Resilience Through Technology in the month of July, which aims to assess the progress made by end-user enterprises in their digital transformation initiatives since 2021. I would now request Swapnil to briefly explain the key highlights of the report. Over to you, Swapnil.
Sure. Thank you so much, Prerna. Thank you for the introduction and also for being such a great partner for us in this space. This report that Prerna talked about, it's actually a culmination. It's the third report that we've done in this region, in this area. Primarily 3 years ago, I think we started off with, everyone was talking about we're digital, we're digital, we're digital. And we wanted to partner along with NASSCOM to figure out what is digital, what is a digital enterprise, just to put some of those metrics in place so that we know what is the comparison here. That's when the first report came out 3 years ago, which really focused on really classifying what is enterprise digital maturity. The second one, which we did last year, the agenda was supposed to be something else, but then COVID came and the entire report was more about how enterprises are reacting to COVID, how they're using digital to even sustain their businesses, and a lot of that. So I think in many ways, this report is really the most critical one, the third one that we've done, because we're still not out of the pandemic, but we're getting there, and enterprises are now looking at recovery and resurgence. So that's why I say this becomes important is that COVID, the last year was really more about survival. This year, all the digital enterprises, the initiatives that they're taking and the ones that they're sticking to will really define how enterprises become digital in the midterm to the long term. And hence this is really the time when a long strategy about digital will become standard. Now, that's why I think we wanted to do this research and we wanted to put in a lot of effort around it. I won't go too much into the details of the report, but we've really tried to make sure that we have great coverage. We have over 550 odd enterprises globally that we've covered, through direct interactions with either through surveys or interviews with senior decision-making executives. We've tried to make sure that we have a fair representation across all major industries which use technologies. And we've also looked at it from the angle of large, medium, very large organizations as well, because different organizations at their size, their kind of revenues, their kind of digital budgets are very different, and how they're allocating them is really critical, not just for the enterprises, but also for the entire ecosystem, whether it's service providers who are addressing them, software makers, ISVs who are looking to support enterprises in their missions. So at a very high level, those are some of the findings. I would encourage all of you to, I think, go to either NASSCOM or Avasant site where the research is available for anyone to take. Prerna, back to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Swapnil, for that comprehensive, lucid introduction to the report. So without further ado, I would now like to jump straight into the questions. I would like to start with you, Ravi. While operational efficiency and revenue growth continue to remain key drivers of digital transformation, our report findings indicate a clear shift from a simple customer centricity CX-led model in the pre-COVID era to a customer-cum-employee centricity, that is a CX plus EX driven model March 2020 onwards. So I would like to understand from you if this is a shift in focus that your organization has witnessed too, and what do you believe are currently the key drivers of the digital transformation charter in your organization? Also, what would be great if you could elaborate upon any specific digital initiatives that your organization has particularly undertaken to boost employee engagement and productivity, especially in the wake of the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely, Prerna. I think firstly, I think it's a wonderful read from Avasant on the, digital maturity and especially the post-COVID. And I think like Swapnil said earlier, pandemic has changed a lot. It has changed from survival mode, sustenance mode, to probably accelerating the digital adoption mode as well for many companies. I think it's the same thing for us as well in Sony. And again, from a customer centricity still remains very critical, very core for all of our businesses. I think, like you said, one of the important shift that has happened is looking at employee centricity. And again, in today's world, we are talking about hybrid working model, flexibility being one of the key words, Great Resignation, another topic of discussion for a different day. But again, I think the employee experience and employee centricity becomes much more critical for all of us in today's world. And from our organization perspective, a couple of things that we have done specifically looking at this as an opportunity is how to capitalize on the need for flexibility. So one of the things that we did earlier this year was we conducted an internal hackathon, which is primarily focusing on how to improve workplace productivity in a hybrid world. I think we've done something similar in an earlier setting, in a typical office setting. But I think we did something similar, but in a hybrid mode. How will the productivity? How do we define productivity, and how do we improve productivity once we have a handle on what to measure and how to measure stuff? I think that has been a very important thing. And as part of this, we implemented several, small projects. I would say it as small projects or small initiatives. Something very simple as a chatbot. Chatbots for internal productivity. How do I get information about our HR policies? Where do I reach people? And especially when we had people joining remotely or virtually from any part of India. So how do we make them connected to each other? I think those kind of things is what we enabled through this, digital adoption, usage of technology, leveraging our technology skills. We made it easier, faster, better for some of the new joinees to get inculcated into our organization. Then, of course, some of the quick wins when we returned back to office, we did certain things like how do I provide facility access? How do I make a seat reservation if I want to use office for a particular day or use a meeting room and those kind of things? Earlier we never had the system. Maybe we used just the Office 365, but then now we have mobile apps and stuff like that. The other important thing, again, this is something we are still working on, is employee communication has always been an important topic. How do we communicate to our employees? And from that perspective, and again, in a virtual world, it becomes all the more complex. Probably we can have one-way communication easily through a Teams meeting, but how do we have that interactive sessions in a Teams meeting where people don't see each other, you don't see the reaction of people on faces. So how to get that kind of feedback from our employees and see how do we take action? Again, we are looking at something with technology. How do we enable better communication, better approachability, especially to the senior leaders, managers, and so on. So I think those are a couple of initiatives that we have been taking to bridge this gap as well as address the customer employee centricity point of view.
Right. Great. Great insight. Sriram, I would like to know, if you are seeing similar trends in your organization as well as the clients you cater to.
Yeah, absolutely right. When Ravi was basically speaking about few things, right? We are kind of overlapping a lot of things, right? Very similar. When he spoke about a chatbot that they have put for people to take care of their day-to-day operational thing, right? Probably a relieving letter, right? Or a day-to-day information where he's going to get and so on. We did the same thing. We put a chatbot for operations, right? So how do we really run operations and what kind of integration that we need when you're doing a change across multiple hybrid cloud that we have got when we are doing a change, how we basically get people together. So we had chatbots and we had places where people could come and integrate, right? So I could relate a lot lot of things that Ravi was basically speaking about, right? One of the key things that Sabre focuses is the culture, right? As they say, kind of culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? Bringing culture and bringing that engagement to people has been one of the most important things, right? Like how much we focus on our customer engagement, we focus equally on employee engagement, right? Without that, we'll not be able to build the culture, and without culture, we are not going to be servicing our customers the way we want. So that's the big emphasis across the board. So we did several initiatives during this pandemic and changed the way we operate, right? Few big things I'll just try to touch upon. One is on the campus recruitment and the process that we followed, right? Every year we have been hiring from campuses across India, several of them. So we did the whole drive virtually, right? Right from getting the whole online tests to doing the interviews, and we didn't want to compromise on the quality of the hires, right? We didn't want to make sure that the same person is attending these interviews, right? So there's ton of technology that went into each of this, and completely digital. We were able to transform this whole program, and then we conducted a virtual boot camp that normally happens in a physical way. We did a full boot camp to get that whole engagement of these freshers and kind of merge them with the existing lot, right? So it's a very tricky thing, but tons of technology, right? Several spot quizzes, engagement activities, surveys, polls, chat. I'm like, it's just a kind of confluence of several items that went into it to really make it successful. Right. And the other important thing that we started doing is a program called Space, where we basically got to do multiple engagements in phases, like the tracks of learning. When we say learning, it's just not CBT based or a tutor based learning. We did a lot of sessions where experts would come in and do lot of do it yourself kind of sessions, right? To just to engage people on doing things. So we did several of these activities to make sure that people are seamlessly able to move from this physical world that we are used to, right? And in my role of running worldwide operation centers and command centers where people are kind of glued to the monitors, see what's happening to our systems all the time, right? I all the time say we watch like a hawk, right? So our engineers kind of watch these systems like a hawk, because truly, right, if like 30 minutes there is a delay, it causes big disruption to people who are traveling and so on. We just want to be very sure about it. So moving to the virtual world without those big boards, massive centers, right? We changed the way we completely do. We put a lot of new tools and technologies into place. We did a lot of automation, that was change management. Several things were automated and semi-automated, right? And tried to get this hybrid world, right? Like little bit physical, little bit hybrid, right? And trying to put everything together and making it a mesh of it. So that's a big thing we did. And one another thing that we did, right, which is slightly away from what we are talking about, right? Taking people completely into digital native stuff of metaverse and so on. We did another thing for the employees, try to get them off the digital world by introducing Headspace subscription to everybody, right? I'm like, don't be super digital about it, right? I'm like, take time off, do meditation, do some little bit chair yoga on the chair, right? Do stuff like that. That's again the whole work life balance, or we should say we were living in the work, right? We were not having work life balance. We were literally living at a workplace. That's how it was to me, at least, right? So we really introduced that to kind of declutter their mind and get focused back into the work that they are doing. So those are the things that we did.
Wonderful. Interesting insights. Very nice. Okay, so I'll move on to the next question. And basically, so another key highlight from our report is that, there has been a significant increase in digital spending in the last 2 years. And in fact, our analysis of the surveyed enterprises reveals that in FY 2022, nearly 70% enterprises spent greater than 4% of their revenues on IT, and close to 60% businesses spent more than 20% of their IT budgets on digital. So it would be wonderful if we could understand from you, Ravi, if Sony too has doubled down its tech investments considerably in the last 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely, Prerna. I would say, in fact, much more than double. I think the reasons being, again, it is Our investment initiatives has been, I would broadly classify into three areas. One is the enterprise platforms, which are typically the core backbone systems that we have, the SAP and those kind of stuff. And again, we are at a cusp where many of the companies are migrating from the legacy platforms into the modernized platforms. I think that's one big initiative that we have been working on. And I think while we are not just looking at the technology upgrade, but we are also looking at it as an opportunity to be preparing ourselves for the future. So when we will have more channels to reach out to our customers, it's very important that the backend platforms also are well built, looking into what should be thought of for the future and so on. So from that point of view, we've been heavily looking at, and again, it's also an important point to look at how do we standardize the core backend systems at the same time have our uniqueness preserved from a business point. So that's the first area of how we spend our initiative amounts. And the second area is also looking at the architecture. And again, now we are looking at, let's say, the composable architecture or microservices based architecture. So it's also important to invest in terms of how do we build that core infrastructure layer, or let's say the middleware layer, where we have API based integration, microservices, and those kind of things. I think that's again a huge investment that we are making, again, towards preparing for the future. The third area, I think that's probably the topic of today, which is primarily looking at how do we reach out to our customers, or how do we reach out to our stakeholders and partners much better. So I think that's basically the D2C, direct to consumer focus. That's obviously the third bucket. So again, I think our investment bucket will be split across all these three categories, and I think we are well positioned. We are proceeding towards the right direction. That's my view on how we are progressing.
Great, wonderful insights. And also, Ravi, what would be interesting to understand is that there has been if any, has there been a reallocation in terms of key digital spend focus areas such as tech product services, digital workforce, R&D innovation, or say inorganic growth through acquiring companies with tech capabilities from pre-COVID times to the current period in your organizations? So, if there has been a reshuffling of budget allocation, what are the key spend focus areas that are drawing the larger slice of the pie currently for Sony?
Okay, yeah, I think I wouldn't say there has been a very, very conscious budget reallocation, but naturally, I think I would say natural shift has happened. Again, it's probably coincidence that COVID happened, and difficult to say if COVID had not happened, would we have accelerated or would we have remained the same? It's probably very difficult to say. But I think COVID definitely did help us in proceeding faster along this path. And so again, like I said, the three categories of initiatives, the core systems, just because of the nature that they are the core systems, obviously takes still a lot of absolute amount of our investment budget, because we have to re-platform the entire thing. We have to modify the architecture along with it. The D2C, direct to customer kind of initiatives, of course, they are multi-generation kind of approach, or rolling out features in a little bit iterative manner, or maybe in an incremental manner. So from that perspective, if I look at the absolute numbers, maybe the swing is not too drastic, but at the same time, the trend is very clear that there is a lot of effort. Maybe in the next couple of years, maybe our spend will be still heavily on the architecture modernization and strengthening the core systems. But clearly, the direction is shifting towards how do we get better access to our customer data, better reach to our customer channels. I think that is clearly the trend that is emerging.
Right. No, great. Very interesting insights. And Swapnil, are you also seeing any marked shifts in terms of where your clients are expending their digital budgets?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Ravi mentioned it exactly. There's not a strategy in place, but organically these things have started moving towards certain directions. I think a fair amount of conversation that Sriram, Ravi were talking about is the whole focus on employee experience as well. And that's really one area where we're seeing a lot of investment coming in. If you really break it down, I think automation, and not just the regular automation, but the next level of automation, things like digital buddies, trying to identify and democratize some of that automation by using products which are more low code, which provide employees direct access to building their own solutions, which will help them. The second one, I think very interesting, Sriram, you mentioned about Headspace, right? The whole push towards employee health and safety has, of course, it came front and center during COVID, but I think a significant amount of that is still retaining and will retain in the future as well. So this focus of using AI to identify people, help provide them support where it is required, also do, provide them with even trainings. Trainings used to be very top down earlier. This is the list of trainings, this is what you need to do. Now the entire investment in that is changing. We have several enterprises who are looking at virtual reality, augmented reality as a training tool, and lots of initiatives are already in play, and I'm sure all the panelists are aware of that as well. So there's a lot of investment towards the employee part of it. I think the customer experience part of it has always been there, but this is the new trend that I'm seeing. The second one that I'm seeing also is that CIOs have got more permission now from their boards and from their leadership. And that's reflecting, we are all techies here. So we get excited about things like quantum. We get excited about things like the omniverse. I mean, we call it the omniverse because metaverse is just one of them. We believe a lot of verses will come through. And the real shift here is that the B2B investment is happening over there, right? We all know the Nike stories and the retail stories, the glamorous ones. But banking systems, banking companies are having presence in the omniverse, metaverse in this case. We have investments in quantum, which are no longer science fiction, but they're actually coming here because the use cases are emerging. So those kind of investments are going in. And of course, the third one, there's a lot of talk around it, and sometimes I become a little skeptical when I look at it. But the whole push towards sustainability and how technologies are going to be used for sustainability, it's a balance. I think there's several enterprises where there's more talk than action. But on the other hand, there are several enterprises who are actually using automation, who are using AI and data gathering techniques to track their carbon footprints and take some steps against it. So, sorry, long answer, Prerna, but lots of exciting things.
Very
lots
exciting things and very interesting insights.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks, Swapnil. That was great. That was really interesting. Okay, so another point I would like to understand from the panelists is the mix of managing, workflows in-house vis-a-vis outsourcing them. So the trends that we saw in our report indicated that as enterprises move higher up in the digital maturity curve, they prefer to adopt a well-diversified sourcing strategy with a good balance of in-house and outsourcing of workflows. So starting with you, Ravi, I would like to know your inputs on the same, and what is the mix that your organization is looking at in terms of the in-house versus outsource model currently? Also, is that likely to change, say, in the next 1 to 2 years? And what is, if there is, what is the broad ideal mix that you're looking to arrive at?
Yeah, absolutely, Prerna. I think it's a left eye, right eye kind of conversation. I think both are equally important in sourcing as well as outsourcing. I think there's no doubts about it. There's no need to discuss on whether we can just take one approach or the other approach. At the same time, I think the right balancing is needed. Again, all of us know too much insourcing probably results in a lot of fixed cost, stagnation of talent, maybe how do we adjust for variability in our workflows and so on. So I think that's the disadvantages or challenges with too much of insourcing. And similarly, too much of outsourcing, there is knowledge retention becomes a challenge sometimes, longer learning curve in terms of applicability in a particular initiative or a project. So those kind of things. I think it's all of us know these. I think blend is very much important. But in the current context, I would say, yeah, we've always maintained a kind of diversified mix of workforce management for our projects, and I think it would continue the same way. Of course, the mix would probably change a little bit. Maybe in the past, we've relied a lot on doing ourselves end to end, but probably we need to look at the right availability of expertise rather than and the solutions. And I think that's one of the important shift that we are working on. So in the sense that, some of the new technology, if somebody's already implemented a technology, let's leverage that talent instead of recreating something from scratch. I think that's a very important point that we need to consider. At the same time, how do we retain once we implement certain things? There is probably a fixed duration of time where we need to keep that knowledge core within the organization, and probably beyond a certain age or beyond a certain time, I think it becomes a little bit of a commodity. So how do we transition? It's almost like a tunnel where you get some external help for the expertise part. Then there is a middle phase where you have to implement it, make sure it is stable and stabilized, and then probably again go through out of the tunnel. So I think it's a journey, and again, probably no particular ratio or anything, but I think that's a mix or balance that each organization has to adapt to as to what works best for them.
Right. No, fair point. Great point. Okay, and Sriram, any inputs on the trends you might be witnessing from your clients' perspectives on managing workflows in-house versus outsourcing them?
Yeah, again, right. All of us do a good, healthy portion of both. But to us or to Sabre, it truly depends upon the project and the phase that we are in, right? So we would not say across the board, this is kind of the split we have. But there are projects where there is like we use say 5-10% of outsourcing all the way up to like 40-50% of outsourcing in few projects, right? It totally depends upon the phase in which this project is in and how much for example, there are things that we are doing, right? We are doing a big digital transformation from our legacy centers into public cloud, right? We are moving ton of thing into the public cloud. So where we need expertise to basically move this quick, and we see this as like a year and a half kind of engagement, like 24 months engagement on few projects that we are working on, where we have outsourcing companies come and help us basically do that because they've done it for multiple companies, right? They have the expertise, right? And after that kind of works win-win for both, right? And today the one good thing, right, in the landscape, if you have seen the last say 15 years how this has evolved, it used to be extremely difficult to get higher-end resources to come and help on these bases. Most of the time we will use to hire them, the key resources, and then get the guys work along with the team. But now it's a reverse, right? So we hire the experts, right, and then get them to consult for some time and then move. So it kind of there's a big shift that I'm seeing in the mindset, and a lot of openness from both the vendors and from the companies basically to come together at a place where it becomes win-win for both, right? It's that's the strategy that we are adopting, right? So wherever there is a need, we find that this would be better off that we get some external sharp help there, we get them. And where we think that, hey, this is like what Ravi was saying, right? It's a big maturity in the middle where we say that, okay, we have kind of done the bulk of the work. Now this can be run and maintained. This can be done by outsource, and there's not much of technology knowledge drain that we are having, right? We basically have a strategy where we get a partner to do bulk of the work, right? So both the places, expertise, sharp help from outsourcing companies, and also bulk where where we can basically give the chunk of work. We do both, and that's an interesting trend that I'm seeing that's reversing in the space, and it's great for all of us, right? It's just a phenomenal trend reversal that I'm seeing in the last few years of dealing with a lot of outsourcing.
Wonderful. Swapnil, any thoughts you would like to share?
Yeah, I think actually there's a slightly different observation that we've been having in our enterprise discussions. And one of the things, Ravi, that you mentioned, which you said was a discussion for another day, the Great Resignation, right? We all keep hearing about it, but the big stories that we hear are from the service provider side, big attrition rates and things like that. But frankly, even on the enterprise side, that Great Resignation is having a significant impact. The technology teams were already, not as large or not as vast as some of the service providers. And the battle for new age technology skill sets has really increased significantly. And that's where we are actually seeing a significant uptick in outsourcing from some of our enterprise customers and other folks that we speak to. I mean, it's fairly simple. There's a great need for talent which is focused on these new emerging areas, which are fundamental right now. It's no longer a cloud expert or an AI expert. You need people who can bring those two together, right? And that's a very rare skill set and an attitude to have. Now, what's happening, of course, is that outsourcing companies are designed to be able to attract a lot more talent in areas where this talent is available across the globe, right? Sometimes enterprises are not really as equipped to attract that talent as a service provider is, and sometimes we've seen people, enterprises actually outsourcing primarily to gain access to that pool of talent which otherwise they would not have. And that's a push that we're seeing. So everyone wants to have that balance between insourcing and outsourcing. But to me, it's leaning a little bit more towards outsourcing because there's a lot of investment required in building your own team with all the new skills and bringing them together. So that's something that we've been observing. Outsourcing has been growing. Of course, the old adage of, because of COVID, now companies realize that a lot more can be outsourced. Things which supposedly could not be outsourced or they were too core. Now that's no longer the case. So both of these factors, I think, coming together, we observe that it's really driving outsourcing, especially in really high tech areas, a lot higher.
Right.
I have a question to Swapnil. Can I ask quickly?
Yeah, sure.
Sure. Hey, Swapnil, when you said that you're finding people are trending towards a lot of outsourcing, is that to do with the early startup companies to a mature company? Is there a difference that you're finding, right? For example, I could relate when you said probably putting together a fresh team from scratch for a startup or for a new project inside a company. That makes sense, right? Do you have the split, or have you got some analysis on this? The outsourcing trend between the startups and the new age, like for like 1 to 2 years, 3 years company, whereas like a 20, 15 year plus company. Do you have any?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. I think my observation is a little counterintuitive. What we saw, large companies are trying to get into the new emerging technology spaces and build sort of teams to run those initiatives, and they're facing a lot of challenges. That's where we see a lot more outsourcing actually happen. Startups or small companies sometimes feel that is core to their business, core to the main solution they have. This is where the VCs will fund them based on that. So there is a reluctance. So the outsourcing there is more to do with what you guys spoke about earlier, that we've done the bulk of the work. Now we want to outsource the maintenance part of it. The larger enterprises are bringing in those skill sets and teams to build that more out. So yeah, I hope
That's
that
a
helps.
good one. No, good one.
Great. So yeah. So moving on, wonderful thoughts. So interestingly, another trend that came out in our report, and which I would like to know your thoughts on, Sriram, is that in FY 2022, companies exhibited an increased willingness to enter long-term, that is 3+ years tech contracts, constituting a significant digital transformation component as compared to FY 2020. So I wanted to understand, are you seeing similar trends from your clients as well?
Yeah. That's like the underlying big, again, one of the trend reversals, right? If I just look back and why this is happening, right? Kind of we are seeing this is also the maturity of technology and the gut feel of the transformation that each of these companies are taking, like what Swapnil was saying, right? More power to the CIOs. They are able to decide on what technology I can bet on and kind of get it into long-term contracts and long-term solutions with somebody, right? So it's an interesting thing, right? From pure hybrid, people are looking at one cloud service provider who could kind of come and help everything for me for a long-term contract. So can I basically enter a contract with them, right? So if somebody is able to give a holistic solution, definitely people are getting into it. That's because of clearly paths that the companies are able to choose, right? The technology paths that we are able to choose. If you're going into this house, what are the benefits I'm going to get, right? How much of advantage I'm going to get? What's the cost benefit I'm going to get, and so on. And giving a long-term commitment in this whole digital transformation journey, and a lot of them moving into the cloud and so on. I think they get better bargaining power when you basically have a longer contract with a company rather than getting into like a short-term contract. That has, I think, helped as well, because the whole thing of the power to basically argue and kind of work with the vendor in a nice way to get better bargain for the rates, right, is one big proponent to this. And clearly the advantage of sticking and choosing to a technology and having the path, a separate path in any technology that you use, fundamental technology you use to solve any business problem that you have. If you choose the Amazon cloud or the Azure cloud or the GCP, kind of three big areas that you want to move to, each of the tracks kind of can help you solve the business problem, right? And you basically, if you're mostly a Windows shop, probably you will choose Azure cloud than the others, right? So you basically look at how you are and basically go, right? If you are looking at more co-location, more flexibility, right? More Oracle power and so on, right? Where you want to have HA and things like that, then probably, right, more bare metal service, probably you might go into Amazon, right? And GCP is a similar structure that you'll use. But once you choose that, then I think each of these clouds and each of these technologies have a long-term path. So most of them are doing these long-term contracts. We ourselves are doing a lot of long-term contracts with our companies, with the vendors, with the infrastructure providers, and so on, because of these things. So that's kind of the trend that I'm seeing.
Okay, great. Ravi, would you also like to share some thoughts on the same from Sony's point of view?
Yeah, kind of similar. Again, it is probably no one answer to this, right? In the sense that, yeah, I think long-term contract definitely gives us much more purchasing power. Right. At the same time, we have to be careful in terms of not being in a hostage situation to a particular vendor down the line. And again, I think there's a lot of this big fish eating small fish is happening in the marketplace. And how do we not get caught into that, that situation where we are bonded by a particular contract? So I think it's a very careful evaluation that we need to do on a case by case basis. We need to do very serious due diligence, and I think again the management connect at the time of before entering into a contract is absolutely essential. But again, what Sriram said is absolutely right. I think long-term contract does provide us that advantage, but I think we have to very carefully watch out for the risks and commitment or any damages that could happen down the line.
Right. No, really interesting insights there. Very great inputs.
The whole bubble cost angle, right? We are really not understanding the whole bubble cost, right? We are running the whole thing parallelly on the cloud and some on this, and the whole transitionary thing that's happening. And to manage, how do we manage the OpEx with this is kind of tricky with each of the products, right? That's an interesting thing.
Yeah, and I think especially with the cloud. Sorry, Swapnil.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think we are, also thinking on the same thing, especially with the cloud services. Let's say we have a huge, larger AWS footprint, and from a risk mitigation point of view, we are, I think as the first step, we moved our footprint from our workloads from our data center to, let's say, AWS. But then if there is a risk in terms of getting into a tougher situation down the line, we also want to have that portability from one cloud to another. I think that's again a lot of technology usage to make sure that we don't get into that situation. We want to prepare ahead of time, and we are not kind of held hostage at some point in time. So from that point of view, we're also implementing containers and those kind of stuff so that interoperability doesn't become an issue.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point, Dave. The only thing is you lose a lot of cloud native things that you can do on this. That's a whiteboard discussion almost every 3 days once we are stuck with, right? Hey, can I really go and invest on this technology and make it like super cloud native and use their APIs and to get the best thing, right? Or should I put this layer in the middle, right? I'm like, so that it makes it agnostic, right? That's an architecture decision that we hit the whiteboard every week or so. There's one thing or the other in every project that we hit.
Wonderful insights. Okay, so my final two questions are around technology priorities, and these are common questions that I would like to address to all the panelists. So which are the top 5 tech priorities for your organization, or the ones that you envision would be critical from your client's perspective, say in the next 1 year or so till FY 2023? And I would also like to understand these key tech focus areas, both in terms of mainstream technologies, such as cloud, cybersecurity, big data analytics, AI, ML, as well as nascent emerging technologies like Web 3.0, Metaverse, connectivity technologies like Wi-Fi 6, 5G, 6G, etc. So starting with you, Ravi, on that.
Yeah, Prerna, I think you already answered the question. It's the same things in terms of what we are focusing on: cloud security, artificial intelligence, data analytics. I think those are already existing, and we're just trying to expand the capability and expand the adoption in our business environment. And again, especially the Web 3.0 and Metaverse, probably I would say still, let's say in an exploratory mode, we are just trying to do experiments. I think the technology capability, of course, we are investing quite a bit in terms of understanding the technology and what is the power of technology. But the real challenge is how do we apply and how do we realize the benefit of this technology? I think that's still in an exploratory phase right now. I think that's a quick answer to your question.
Right. Great. No, nice. And Sriram, what about you? What would like to know your inputs too on the same?
Yeah, sure. Right. Yeah, there are a couple of interesting things here. One is like what Ravi said, that you kind of answered it for us when you basically said the top 5 things that's there in all our minds, right? When you talk about cloud, when you talk about cybersecurity, right? Analytics, right? So we are there. We are heavily invested in most of it, right? Majority of our compute today runs on the public cloud, right? We are fast and furious. We are making this change. That basically brings in tons of concerns on security and kind of because data is like the great data that companies like us hold is very critical. So there is all the time. So we have implemented tons of WAF and technologies like that will protect us from digital fraud and digital thing. Right, that's another big thing that we basically focus on. So we continuously invest in these areas, right? As far as Metaverse being in the travel domain, that's something at least I watch all the time very closely. How it's going to change the travel industry, what's going to happen, right? With tons of metaverse is coming, right? A metaverse of metaverse coming, and then omniverse, like what Swapnil was saying some time ago, right? Every company is creating one, right? I'm like with characters and with everything. Now we are having countries creating their own metaverses online. Recently, I heard there are companies which are setting up embassies in the metaverse, right? So we are just taking it. It's a very interesting space, and we being in the travel industry, watching this trend is very important for us. That's something that we watch very closely. I think it's very difficult to argue or think that whether this is good, bad, but I think we really have to look at the framework around it and really ride the wave, right? When these things become mainstream. The other big thing that we are looking at is on blockchain. Is there things that we can do, right? Yeah, probably not a great time to talk about blockchain when bitcoins are doing, or the whole whole market is doing that bad there, right? So I don't want to kind of get into that, but that's a great technology. Can there be other uses of it? Is something that we are having some exploratory ideas and things like that around those areas. So that's kind of what we are doing.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, and Swapnil, your thoughts?
I think I just like to look at it in a slightly different way. I don't think there are 5 distinct technology priorities anymore.
Right.
I think there is how you bring those technologies together to change the employee experience, the customer experience.
True.
And I think several companies are getting into that stage, and they will all require cloud. They will need a layer of cybersecurity. They will need different things. The technology that I'm most excited about, I think the Omniverse, the AR, VR part of it. And the reason why I feel that it's moving beyond exploratory, Ravi, to your point, is that there are some examples, very interesting examples that are emerging in non-glamorous industries, right? Now, if I look at the employee experience part of it, now, I just saw the news this morning, I think, that Air India has chosen Meta's Workplace as their communication platform, right? Now, Air India, traditional, stodgy, that kind of stuff, moving to Workplace, which maybe not initially, but eventually will have a significant AR, VR component, right? Because that's really the genesis of it. That's the direction architecturally that product is going. Similarly, I mean, on the other side, Accenture has the nth floor, I think it's called, and they recruited, I think, or they onboarded, I think 6,000 or 7,000 of their people using AR, VR technologies, using the Omniverse technologies. Then again, on the customer experience side, again, I won't talk about the glamorous ones, but even Union Bank of India, for example, has a virtual client lounge which they've set up in the Omniverse, right? And to me, those are the really exciting things. And the focus now has to be on the technologies that are not the foundational ones, but which are essential for an effective Omniverse program. So things like digital currencies, things like quantum computing, AR, VR. I think it'll grow, it'll improve, but the step changes I think will come once you marry Omniverse with quantum, with digital currencies, with NFTs actually as well, because then purchasing on the Omniverse becomes really real, right?
Right.
So, I mean, those are some of the areas which I feel and I'm very excited about, where I think the investments will happen. Maybe next year, maybe next couple of years, but I don't think we're 10 years out from it now.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think a very interesting point, Swapnil. I think, yeah, it's not the tech adoption in silos, and it's a confluence and convergence of all technologies, that will get us there.
Probably next year when we are doing a meeting like this, Prerna, we'll probably do it in Teams Mesh, right? We'll not be doing Teams this. We'll probably be doing it Teams Mesh.
I'm hoping so. Yeah. Right. Great. This is really nice, and that thank you so much. With this we come to the end of today's discussion, and thank you for your time and intriguing insights, Ravi, Sriram, and Swapnil. This truly was an enthralling session. And that's it from my side. That's it from this edition of Tech Talk. Stay tuned for more insightful discussions happening in the Indian tech industry with NASSCOM Insights YouTube channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. Till then, it's goodbye from everyone here at NASSCOM Insights. Thanks so much, gentlemen. It was really a great session. Thanks.